This September 12th, SON Estrella Galicia are back in London with their micro festival at Hackney's Paper Dress Vintage. With live music, beer culture, street food and workshops, SON Estrella Galicia is the musical arm of the family-owned independent Estrella Galicia beer brand, which has been creating unforgettable music experiences since 2009. The September the 12th event will be headlined by Coach Party with support from the New Eves, as well as yet-to-be-announced DJ sets and local music selectors. There will be a clothing repair workshop to customise your repaired clothes, a local food vendor serving 0 kilometre food with veggie and vegan options, a Soundcrafters interactive workshop, and a beer pouring workshop. Alongside the London event, there will be a series of new micro-festivals in Madrid, A Coruña, Barcelona later in 2024, and Berlin and Granada in 2025, reflecting a truly global approach from SON Estrella Galicia. So if you're in London, September the 12th, swing by Hackney's Paper Dress Vintage for SON Estrella Galicia. Tickets are available now via Dice. As an independent music podcast, 101 Part-Time Jobs highly recommends DistroKid as the best solution to putting out your own music online. You can join 1 million other artists from all across the world putting out their own music on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and everywhere else across the DSPs where people are listening to your music. My dream as a kid was to run a small little label, and now with DistroKid, getting music out online is the easiest it ever has been, making 100% of your own royalties while paying a small annual fee. And that fee's even smaller as a 101 Part-Time Jobs listener. Head to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod to get 30% off your first year putting out your own music on DistroKid. Getting your own music out into the world has never been easier. Head to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod to get the best deal you can.
Welcome, campers, to a place where reality and myth collide. This is Camp Cryptid, where we explore monsters and legends among us. Now, pack your gear, grab your flashlight, and settle in. The unexplained lurks just beyond the campfire's glow. In the heart of the Indonesian jungle, where darkness reigns and secrets are buried beneath a thick canopy, there exists a sinister legend. A legend of the Ahul, a creature both feared and misunderstood. One moonless night, in a remote village nestled by the river's edge, whispers of dread filled the air. The villagers had long known of the Ahul's presence, and they shared tales of its malevolent nature. The village had always lived in harmony with the jungle. Generations of villagers had coexisted with the wild creatures that called the forest home. But there came a time when a series of gruesome attacks shook the community to its core. It began with the disappearance of livestock. Goats, chickens, and even water buffalo vanished without a trace. The villagers were mystified, unable to comprehend how their animals could simply vanish into thin air. Fear hung over the village like a shroud. Then, the attacks turned even more sinister. One fateful night, as the villagers slept soundly in their bamboo huts, a blood-curdling scream pierced the night. They awoke to find a young man, Rama, who had ventured too close to the jungle's edge, now missing. His hut was in shambles, signs of a violent struggle evident. Hushed voices spoke of the Ahul, the winged terror lurking in the shadows. The villagers had heard its eerie cries, and they believed it to be the harbinger of doom, a creature capable of great malevolence. Days turned into weeks as the village was gripped by a paralyzing fear. Whispers of the Ahul's reign of terror spread throughout the community. and some villagers were even convinced that it was a vengeful spirit seeking retribution for the encroachment of the jungle. Determined to unravel the mystery and end the reign of terror, the villagers formed a brave search party. Armed with torches and machetes, they ventured into the depths of the jungle, guided only by the eerie cries of the Ahul. The search was fraught with danger, as the dense undergrowth and oppressive darkness conspired to thwart their efforts. But they pressed on, guided by their unwavering determination to confront the creature that had terrorized their village. One fateful night, deep in the heart of the jungle, they came face to face with the Ahul. Its wingspan blotted out the moon and the stars, casting an ominous shadow over the search party. With a deafening screech, the Ahul descended down upon them, its eyes gleaming with malevolent intent. A fierce battle ensued as the villagers fought desperately to defend themselves against the winged menace. Torches and machetes clashed with the leathery wings and razor-sharp talons. The cries of the Ahul echoed through the jungle, a symphony of terror that sent shivers down the villagers' spines. In the end, the Ahul retreated, vanishing into the impenetrable darkness of the jungle. The villagers, battered and bruised, returned to Kampong Bang, their fear undiminished, but their resolve unbroken. To this day, the legend of the Ahul continues to haunt the small village of Indonesia. They live in a delicate balance with the jungle, their hearts heavy with the knowledge that the winged terror still lurks in the shadows, waiting to strike again. And as the night falls and the jungle comes alive with eerie sounds, the villagers know that the Ahul is watching, a silent sentinel of the darkness, a cryptid that remains as enigmatic and terrifying as ever.
Hey, it is Ryan Seacrest. There's something so thrilling about playing Chumba Casino. Maybe it's the simple reminder that with a little luck, anything is possible. ChumbaCasino.com has hundreds of social casino-style games to choose from with new game releases each week. Play for free anytime, anywhere for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
I'm 100. I want part-time jobs. I'm 100. I want part-time jobs. I've been working Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Working Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. 101. 101.
Hey, all right, you're listening to 101 with me, Giles Bidder. It's where we hear from bands and musicians about everything they do that goes into their music. On today's episode, we hear from Bradley Simpson, known best as the lead singer of the huge band, the Vamps. They've had 2 UK #1 albums. They've sold out London's O2 Arena 5 times in as many years, and they're a huge pop band. The reason I wanted to speak to Bradley, though, is to speak to a music fan, to speak to someone who's just starting his solo career and going back to these probably heavier records. We talk about his love for Queens of the Stone Age and Jeff Buckley and Gallows, which is a surprise. That's where we start this conversation. So this starts off just as we're setting up and pressing record, and we start off talking about Gallows. and how the Watford punk rock band was his song on his MySpace page. So, loads to come. Bradley Simpson's new singles, Daisy, Picasso, and Cry at the Moon are all out now. He's going on tour later this year, playing Reading and Leeds festivals. This is Bradley Simpson on 101. If you enjoy this episode, make sure you subscribe. We put out 2 episodes every week with interesting bands and artists, and we'd love to have you here for it. And if you're able to leave a review, that would be massively, massively appreciated. It helps us out so much. All right, here's Bradley Simpson on 101. 101 part-time jobs.
Where did you grow up?
I was just saying, just before you got here, near Watford.
Oh, okay.
I was super lucky because got into Gallows at a young age.
Yeah, that was my MySpace song. It's Belly of a Shark.
That's so good.
yeah.
And the thing about that band is they felt like a band from down the road. Which they were for so many people.
Just felt like normal.
They acted like it because they weren't too big. They were underground. They felt underground.
It was like a subculture with these.
So here I am
in the belly of a shark. It was great, and it was just like angst and everything that I wanted at that time. Like I started getting into Nirvana when I was before Gallows, and it felt like the same kind of anger.
Something about rock and punk, where you get the Nirvanas and you get the Pearl Jams, and actually there's a band probably in your town, no matter where you live, and they're not Nirvana and they're not Pearl Jam. Don't get me wrong, but you can get a similar feeling.
Yeah, and you can resonate with it because it's they're from the same town as me, and there's a real.
And it's guitars.
Nice.
It doesn't need loads of lights.
No.
It doesn't need high quality cameras.
Better
like here.
Yeah, like these.
What was your first band
that I got into, or that I was part of? The first band, we were called Relentless. So there was some legal battles with the energy drink.
Really?
And God, no. we were 13, 14, and so I'm still best mates with one of the lads who was in the band, who was the guitarist, and there was 5 of us. And we just started off, I feel like a lot of bands or young musicians start the same way, of just you playing in music class, and we'd spend our lunch and go and play in they had a little rehearsal room with a drum kit, and we used to just go and rehearse, and we used to do covers of My Chem and all of that. That was
technical.
Us. Yeah, it was. But I wasn't singing at that point, so I was just guitar. I was lead guitar in the band. And we started to do gigs, and the drummer's dad owned a venue, so he used to put gigs on, so we'd play there. And again, I didn't sing in the band for 2-3 years. And then the singer left, musical differences. It was a big split. It was a hard time in my life.
When you're teenagers when something like that
It really was, You're what are we going to do here? Because you're so passionate about it.
And you're passionate about it because there's this feeling that you created. You made that. It wasn't like you were going to Weatherspoons or Walkabout or doing what other teenagers were doing.
Yeah.
You built your own little thing, your own world. It's everything.
Yeah, it is. And it's so, I don't know, it's bonding. It's a really strange relationship being in a band. I think it's hard to describe, but even at those those younger bands that I was in before I met the boys in the Vamps, you bonded through spending your lunchtime setting up your amps and your kit, and you spend 20 minutes before and at the end of the rehearsal setting up and packing down, so really you've only got a sweet spot of 10-15 minutes every lunch
That's
break.
The thing, if you're booking out a Pirate Studios or a practice room, you're only going to have 15 minutes, 20 minutes practice. You go through the set twice, boys.
You rattle through, but it's so worth it for those 10-15 minutes. And
saw Bruce Springsteen at the weekend with my family.
How was that?
Awesome, because it was good to hang out with family as well.
Nice.
And haven't really hung out like that in years. And before one of his songs, he was one of my friends from my first band, he was the last person in that group to pass away from cancer. And so he talks about this group that he was in, the first band he was in, and how much that meant to him, and how much that just completely set him off on this path. And it's funny how at a young age you can do that.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's I think it just plants a seed in you, and there's you get a joy from it or a drive from it. And I wasn't necessarily bad in school, but I just knew that it wasn't what I wanted to do, and it didn't like fulfill me. But then when I played music in the bands and played like guitar and stuff, I was just like, this just feels, I'm like, how do I pursue this, and how do I make this feel like it's plausible to do for a career, or just as often as possible? Do you know what I mean?
And coming from Wootton, Salfield,
Sutton Coldfield, yeah, Sutton Coldfield.
Sutton Coldfield.
Just like north of Birmingham, yeah.
What were opportunities like there for you? Because there are some great bands from Brum.
Yeah. Brum.
But they're kind of headliner bands. You know, there's a bit of mileage between a kid growing up there and Sabbath, for example.
Yeah. I mean, we had like, there was a couple of like smaller indie bands come through, and like great bands. Like there was a band called Peace who were from Birmingham who were great. And I'm trying to think if there was any others that I really
Jaws
got into. No, I never heard of Jaws. But like there was
Easy Life.
Easy Life, yeah, they're local boys.
Known as.
And then you had it formerly known as, I know, ridiculous.
Yeah.
But there was like Midlands in general. There was like Mahalia came through, and I just think from where I was like 25 minutes on a train outside of Birmingham. So like the town that I grew up in, there was like nothing really. There was like the community centre where we'd put gigs on. Yeah.
That's sick.
Which was fun, yeah. And it was like there was a skate park and then the main community centre. So it's like I grew up skateboarding as well, and that was just like my place. Like I loved going there. But outside of that, like you're playing to your mates there, and there wasn't necessarily opportunity of like meeting new people or playing to a new audience or supporting a band really in my hometown. So it was always travelling into Birmingham to like go to music shops, go to the rehearsal rooms, like even to go to the skate shops, because I think there was such a synergy, and still is, between like skateboarding and music and culture. But it was that ritual of like getting on the train became like a really like exciting thing, and you're going into a bigger city than the one you're from, so it like,
do you think that made you want it a bit more?
Yeah,
because it's slightly out, it's just a bit out of reach, but doable.
Yeah. There's a really interesting thing that I saw Jack Antonoff say, where, because he's New Jersey and he like grew up in the shadow of New York City, and like it was always out of his bedroom window, and he was like, I'm gonna get there, and it like he compared it to like bands who were in New York City who were like grew up in that environment.
City cool kids.
The cool kids, yeah. And like it kind of instills a different mindset, I think, like being outside of something and wanting to get into it.
'Cause playing music, you've basically got everything working against you.
Yeah.
You got time.
Yes.
You got money. You got the fact that everyone else is trying to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. I think but that's like, there's always like a make or break, or I think, I don't know, it was never like, I never really second guessed it massively, and that was like, I was very fortunate that I met the boys in the band when I was quite young, but also like my parents and my friends around me were very supportive, and like the bands that I was in when I was like 13, they were my mates. So it was like, that's the difference, I think, with bands and solo artists. Like now doing a solo project, it's a completely different beast, because you don't second guess it when you're doing it with your mates, because if one's down, you lift them up, and if you're down, they lift you up, and it's this camaraderie and this like momentum that you can't stop. Whereas like you have to be a real self-motivator, and I've got such a newfound appreciation of that motivation that solo artists have to have, just being like, you're your own biggest champion, you're your own motivator. So I feel fortunate that like I started in bands, and there was that like, well, we're gonna do, it's like borderline delusion that you're like, you have to have a little bit of it, I think, when you start.
Central C said that the other day. He was like, I think I'm where I am now because I was delusional. Yeah. And that was it. You know, you couldn't lose.
Yeah, you can't.
That's not a bad way to live.
No.
No matter what you're doing.
No, yeah, I think it's just like, keep the faith, and then I think people also gravitate to that as well. If you're like so sure in what you're doing and what you want to do and where you're going, people go, okay, they've got something.
Well, people pay money to see someone on a stage believe in themselves.
Yeah,
like I think that's like the spirit of rock and roll.
Yeah.
You see someone else having fun, and you're part of it. You live vicariously with it. Then it's part of you.
Yes, 100%. It gives you this like. Yeah, that's so true. I've never really thought about that when we were speaking about Gallows before, and like those kind of bands where you're like, oh my God, who's this like person that's come out of nowhere and has just got this attitude and confidence. And yeah, it makes you go a bit like, I'll have a bit of that. Like, I like that. And why shouldn't you in the world? Do you know what I mean? Why shouldn't you be like, have the self-belief, or just to maybe not fit into the molds that are set there? I think growing up, it's quite, in music especially, but I think for a lot of different paths that you want to go down, it's not necessarily like clear set for you. So there's always a bit of like, kind of like you're trying to figure it out, and that comes with a bit of angst and a bit of like, you need a bit of like force to do that.
Sure. Yeah. And I think it doesn't matter what age you're at, whether you're 15 or 50.
Yeah.
I think you have to do really well, maybe have a lot of luck to go through life without having those completely lost times.
Yeah.
It could last for years.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, I think you almost need to go through them a little bit, and I think everyone does, but it's also like you kind of need them to know when you found, as like cliche as that sounds, and you're like, you need the rain for the sun, and like it's just those appreciation moments, as hard as they are when you're in them, but I think they give you perspective, and they give you, if anything, that's the kind of sorts the, if anyone's going to come out the other side of it and be like, no, I'm still, although it was tough, I'm still as set as I was going into this like low period. You still know. That's a real good instigator. That's the thing that like instills self-belief, is you're like, well, I've got through that and I've come out the other side. You're like, yeah, I'm going to keep going.
It seems like the only thing that really matters is just to keep going.
Yeah.
Keep doing it, even when it's raining and you're on the Monday morning bus.
100%.
And it's late and you really don't feel like getting out of bed or anything like that.
You just got to keep going. And we found like, and I found a lot with this stuff as well, time is aside from like all of like, be it achievements or like any accolades or whatever it is in any walk of life, I think like time is the biggest thing that garners like some form of like respect or appreciation. There's like a huge amount of people who sit with their arms folded for a long time, but like, you know what I mean, like the people in the audience or on the sidelines will sit like that until in their heads they've deemed it, you've stuck around for long enough, or you've stuck at something, and then it's like, okay, fair enough, you've got like, and whether that's like learning something and you've put your 10,000 hours in, so you know you've got your foundations to build, or whether it's live music, or whether it's just like releasing music, or like whatever it is, I think like showing that you've put the time in and you're not in it for a quick win. I think we're seeing that more and more now that there's socials everywhere and people can see the likes. And so if you've been a band for 5 years and there will be thousands and thousands of these bands and artists out there, and they'll get 20 likes on a new single release. The single could be still sick. Yeah, I know. But they might be put off the fact that no one's paying attention just yet. Yeah. And then the irony of it is that once they stick around for 10 years and people come over to them, it's like, oh yeah, we were here the whole time. Yeah, it's always the way. I think it's like, it's so much harder as well in that setting, the social setting, because I think even if you play to like 5 people in a bar, as hard as that can be, there's like some tangible, if one of those 5 people is like, at the end of the gig, you're like, at least they liked it, or like, but it doesn't feel the same as like one comment or one like. You know, you're not getting that same like human connection, and that in turn drives you to carry on going. So I can see how it's like, so it can be demotivating, the social thing, and I think it's a really interesting time that we're in with music. And I get a lot of bands like on my algorithm that it's like, I think that's great, and then I look and it's like you say, it's like small numbers, and I'm kind of like, that's wild to me, because it's really cool, and there's definitely people out there who would be interested in this, but it's just such a loud conversation at the moment, like it's hard to get your voice heard. Speaking of that, when you're playing these big shows with the Vamps, what's it like the next day when you're sat in your bedroom and you're writing a tune on an acoustic guitar? It's nice. I mean, it's like, I think it was very difficult to kind of manage that high to low kind of thing. Like, it took us a few years to figure out, because you're on such a buzz after a show, especially if it's like a really good one. And you come off and you're like, we speak about it all the time within the band, and even now, like in these solo shows, like you just go back to a hotel room and you're just like,
and you're on your own.
Yeah, you're on your own. It's a strange thing.
Do you think with these solo tracks, you've been able to sit with them and playing with them, that kind of makes it more of a, I don't know, like combined world of those two, you know, being on your own but playing the shows? It seems like for the solo tracks, they're the same thing. They're you. Yeah,
I think it's like finding like your reasons for doing it and focusing on that, like pre or post show. So like for me, it's like taking a moment after the gigs and being like, I got to play these songs that I've been working on for 2 years, and some of them are really personal and have been real cathartic songs to write. And it's like that gratitude of being like, be it 5 people or 500, however many people, I've got the opportunity to play it. And like that's that, like I've written it in a bedroom here, we've produced it in the studio, and now it's out in the world and I get to play it. So I think it's like focusing on those things kind of grounds you a little bit.
You can play them acoustic. Cry at the Moon sounds great acoustic.
Oh, thank you, man.
And it's kind of a band track,
but
it sounds sick on an acoustic guitar, on like a good, what are they called, jumbo body Gibsons?
Yeah, it was like I bought this hummingbird in Japan last year, and it was like I only got into like vintage guitars like a couple of years ago, and then I was in Japan and they've just got such a good vintage guitar world. Played this hummingbird, I was like, I love it, I've got to have it. And then got it shipped back, and the guy come out and he's like, we got this case and it's like, I think it's like, I want to say 64, the hummingbird, like he's an old boy. And he brought the case out and he was like, this is what we're going to ship it back in. It's the original case. I was like, you may as well be wrapping it in like a sheet of A3 paper. Like it's falling apart. I was like, tell me you have a flight case for this. And he was like, yeah, we do. And then got it shipped back. But that was like the guitar that I wrote a lot of the album on.
Do you think guitars have songs?
100%. 100%. That's why like the vintage guitar things have been a real interest. Because I think they hold stuff, and they hold like a bit of whoever's played them before, and you kind of inherit in that. And like whatever you pick up, whether there's like, 100%. I bought a piano like very early in the band's career. It was like after the first tour we did, I always wanted like an upright piano, and I was like, we've just done our first tour. And there was like 2 options. It was a Yamaha U1, and there was like a reissue from like 2012 or 2014, and then there was the original from like the 60s. And I got the original one and I put it in the house. And like it's even got like a smell, like you get like
like a book.
You get a real feeling from it. So I do believe that like instruments hold songs, and that's why you've got to surround yourself with like weird stuff, because I think it unlocks a part of you that you wouldn't get with just an off-the-shelf thing.
Do you know what? Surrounding your stuff with books, guitars, music, conversations, that's healthy.
100%, dude, yeah. Because I think a lot of the best songs or a lot of the best writers are pulling from, like, real conversational stuff. Like, there's an art to being able to say something in a way that you couldn't have, like, no one could have said in a conversation, and it's, like, beautiful and poetic. That's one thing. But then I think being able to, like, pull out conversation and put it into song, and it'd be like everyone says that, and it becomes such a universal thing. I think that's in turn as like hard to achieve. So
people transpose your stories into their lives.
Yeah. It's crazy hearing that when people come up to you and they're like, "Oh, this meant that to me," and blah, blah, blah.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
You said it.
Yeah. It's wild.
When you're looking at interviews, not that you would, but when I'm looking at interviews with you and the Vamps, a lot of these places, and they're fine, they exist for a reason. You know, they're like tabloids or Lorraine type TV, and they're often asking about your like personal life and talk about maybe what you look like, and these kinds of conversations where they're basically framing you as a pop star.
Yeah.
What's your journey been like that? Because obviously you're a big music fan. You grew up listening to punk bands, going to local gigs. You're in a ostensibly really fortunate position to join a band that becomes that pop band. What's your journey? Bit of reflection time here.
Yeah.
What's your journey been with like seeing yourself as that and thinking, am I a pop star or am I a musician that's in this place?
Yeah, it's weird, man. Like, that's a great question. It definitely took a bit of time to like figure out, because it's the same with all the boys in the band. Like, each one of us, like, those boys are amazing musicians. Tristan's an amazing drummer, Connor's an amazing musician, as is James. And like, I think we started rehearsing in garages, like Tristan's family garage, and like little rehearsal rooms, and very much the same dynamic as we all were in bands when we were like, every one of us was in the band that I was in when I was 14, like your school friends. So it was like, it felt the exact same, but then it was thrust into a very like a different kind of dynamic. And I think it was where the world was at that point. Like, there was a real focus on boy bands and pop. And 2014, and I think we always were very like, we never like shunned it whatsoever, but because we always knew, we were like, well, we know, like, we play live and we build the sets ourselves, like we MD everything ourselves.
What does MD mean?
Musical director.
So even
like,
if you're collaborating with people writing, you're still like, this is what we like, this is the direction we're going in.
And like, down to like the live sets, so like a lot of people will bring musical directors in to help transitions and like form the live set, and like we've done that for the whole band, and like done our transitions and interludes and things like that, and that's what we really enjoy, and that's what we grew up doing. So I think we always felt really like sure of what we were, so it didn't give too much of a like split personality or kind of worrying. But it's strange, especially because like I personally didn't grow up watching those kind of interviews either. Like, I was really interested in like the more muso-y interviews about like what guitars people were playing, or so it felt strange at first, but then I think it also was nice to see off the back of stuff like people being interested in the music and wanting to come to the shows. And I think it's like always about surviving as a live band and as a live artist. That's been the big thing for the band. It's been a big thing for me. Just doing stuff that enables us to like gig as much as we can.
Music, like lots of cultures, subcultures, people are going to be snobby. People are going to be like, I don't like this band, but I like that band.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, those two groups are just, they're people.
Yeah.
And they, to a big extent, you don't really choose who you're surrounded by or what kind of peers you become to different people.
Yeah.
I've learned that a lot. I grew up listening to a lot of punk rock and being like, oh no, I don't like the Strokes.
Yeah.
Because the people at the indie kids at school like the Strokes.
Yeah, interesting.
Jokes on me. This is sick. And it took me like 15 years later to be like, oh, this is actually pretty sick. I wish I was more open-minded to it at the time.
Yeah. It's funny, because you like attribute genres of music.
It's like tribalist.
Yes, yeah.
But that's sort of going now.
I think so. I think that's what's really cool about what's happening in music is like, you look at people's playlists now and it's just like folk, rap, rock, pop. Like, it's just a mix of like what they like and like what's resonating with them. And I think that's really cool because you're opening people up to music that typically would have been, like you say, quite closed off.
All corners away from each other. Yeah,
and you would have felt like, I definitely hear you, like when you're growing up, like there'd be, it was almost cliquey of like, if you're a rocker, you're a rocker. Yeah. And you don't mix with this and blah, blah, blah. And it's always happened that way. Our parents' generation, they were like Teddy Boys or Greasers, and they would fight, which is ridiculous to think of. It's mad, they'd fight just because of what they look like. For us, it was a little bit less, but still quite tribal. Yeah. And now I think there's younger fans who they might dress a particular way, but listen to music that's completely different to what they look like. Yeah. That's cool. It's cool. And I think everyone's also so embracing of whatever anyone wants to do. Like, there's a lot of like young artists that I've been working with or having conversations with, and you can just see the mindset is so open, and just like, I love that person is being authentic and being themselves, no matter what that is, what version of them that is. It's like not being afraid. Yeah, and I'm like, that's amazing. That's exactly how people should be growing up now, is with the freedom to be who they want to be. Were you afraid to write these solo songs? I was, yeah. I was, well, I think I've gotten so used to like writing in a certain way for a long time, and then I think there was like an internal conversation and then a conversation with the guy that I produced the album with.
Boots. He's done stuff with Beyonce.
Yeah, Run the Jewels. Yeah. He's a legend.
How did you meet him?
We just met on FaceTime one day. He's worked on a Jet album. Do you remember Jet?
The band, yeah.
Yeah.
Do You Want to Be My Girl?
Yeah. That whole first album was amazing.
Sounds great, doesn't it?
He did they did some new songs together, and I heard the songs, and I don't think they're out yet. But I just remember being like, I love Jet. His voice is amazing, but the production was really cool on it. And we found out it was Boots who was doing it. And just like we chatted on FaceTime, and then I went over to New York for like 3 weeks, having never met him, and we just clicked, and then ended up doing the whole album with him. But I remember early on in the process, just like more than writing or producing, it was a lot of conversations about like what to do as a solo artist and what to say. And it was a lot about like honesty and diving into stuff that I maybe haven't spoke about or haven't really like pulled back the curtain on as much. So that was scary to me, because I'm instinctively I'm quite a private person, and I do my music and then I bugger off. Like, that's the way that I've always kind of been.
It's vulnerable. Yeah. I think playing music can feel very embarrassing.
Yeah. It's like an open wound almost. Which
is wild, because the people receive it, it's never embarrassing. It's empowering.
Yeah, I know, but it's hard. It's a weird thing to get your head around. And like, I think if you flip it, like if I flip it as to how I perceive music as a fan, even when I was younger, to how I am now, yeah, I think 9 times out of 10 people are like, cool, you're saying what you want to say, or you're saying something that resonates with me. And I think it's a vulnerable thing to do, but I think once you get over that, and that was like a big thing to get over in this album writing process, and then it feels quite empowering after that, and you're like, yeah, I can own it, I can own these stories.
Yeah, like you should.
Yeah.
It's like the way you dress.
Yeah.
Own it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you see that hat.
Yeah. Put it on. Yeah.
101 Part-Time Jobs is the name of this show.
Cool.
It's about musicians working jobs, and as it started interviewing emerging artists who may be working at the supermarket or at cafes, I quickly realised, interviewing people who play music for a living, that there's more than 101 jobs that go into your life now. I mean, doing this interview for one, and then you got other things to do later today, and you're speaking to the next person, then you got to write the song, then you're speaking to the producer. Music's been, I mean, you said earlier how there's never any other option. But did you work side hustles before it became like a full-time job?
I had like the odd. My dad teaches golf, and I used to help him.
Right, like your Caddyshack.
Collect balls, yeah, and like I had the whole golf cart and used to go out and collect the balls. And
that's a good look.
Yeah, it was quite fun. I did enjoy it. Like, I just like driving the buggy. That was like the best thing ever. But that was
out on the road if you could.
Yeah, well, we did a couple of times, and he was like, I'd turn back up at the house because the driving range is only around the corner from the house, and it was like his buggy, and he was like, why have you driven the buggy on the road to come back? And I was like, well, it's just easier, isn't it? And he was like, but
that's one step further than a tractor.
Yeah. Get crushed by a tractor. But that was the only like kind of job, and it still doesn't feel like a job. I was just driving a buggy. But there was like, I used to, when I started doing acoustic stuff by myself when I was like 14, 15, I used to busk a fair bit, and we used to go down to Cornwall as a family, and I'd busk in Cornwall because like there was no danger of me seeing anyone I knew. So I'd busk in Cornwall, and then I used to I remember I'd go on YouTube, and you can get like pieces of card. You can go and buy a piece of card from like the Works or something, and then you can make it into like an album sleeve. Like there's a folding way of doing it, and I'd burn CD. I burnt like 20 CDs at the time of demos that I'd made on Logic, and then like drew the album artwork myself, which was terrible. And then I'd have those, and then if I bust and like anyone was interested, I'd or I'd do gigs around the pub in Cornwall as well. So that was like the first like proper look into like there's more than just sitting there like playing your songs.
It's entrepreneurial.
Okay, yeah, kind of. I think because you like no one else is going to do this, and like I want to get it out there.
I think that's why Ed Sheeran will always be awesome, no matter if you listen to his music a lot or not, because he started off that way.
Yeah, he's just a grafter.
Yeah,
like
musicians are grafters. No one is going to do it for you, right?
Yeah.
Until they do, and then you got to make sure, you got to remember that you're still in charge.
Yeah. Very true. Yeah, I think even more so now. Like, there's more. Like, there's just you're right. It just feels like there's jobs getting added on to the like CV of like, okay, you got to write tunes, produce, but all of this, and then it's like right now you've got to be a content creator and you've got to be able to shoot your video as well and do all of this and come up with the ideas. And I think it's a lot of, maybe it's just a shift. And I think if you were to ask me like years ago when I was younger, like making your CDs or busking or whatever it was, you wouldn't even think twice about it. And I think if you're coming through now, maybe people aren't thinking twice about it, and it's just a bit more in them of being like making music and be like, oh, I could make a cool 30-second TikTok for this, and that's just like
part of it.
And maybe it'll just be everyone will have that in the next few years, but I think it comes with a lot of pressure. So I think there's always trying to support people going through it. I think there could be maybe more around like young artists, like
support, advice
and just like navigating it all. It's a hard industry to navigate, you know what I mean? There's no book, there's no like course to take to be like, you're relying on your gut a lot. And when you're young, there's a lot of older people in the industry who you kind of feel beholden to, or you feel slightly like what do I know? Do you know what I mean? Whereas your gut and instinct.
The reality is that's what everyone's thinking.
Yes. Yeah. No one has a fucking clue what's going on all the time. So it's like, trust your gut. I think there needs to be more that can instilled in like younger artists, that it's like, just as much, trust yourself, back yourself.
Totally. I'd love to see in like music classes in school be like, this is how you release something. This is how you should promote yourself. This is how you should write your PR.
Yeah.
Do it. Go out and do it.
Yeah. I think that's great, yeah. I think it definitely should be part of it. And then, like, getting to grips with just, like, there's so much, man, that I think it would be interesting to give that knowledge to younger artists, or have it a bit more part of their journey. From
especially in different parts around the UK, not just London.
Yeah.
I imagine people who music becomes a full-time thing, you're like, okay, well, I have to go to London or Manchester.
Yeah. I know. I found that in Birmingham a lot, and I think about that because I think there's, it's like in Birmingham it felt like there was enough, but people were always migrating to London, like always, like there was a ceiling. And I think it's like you shouldn't feel like that. Like in America, I always felt like it wasn't necessarily. Maybe people were going to LA, but you'd see like Nirvana come out of like Seattle and the East Coast. Would have like all of the East Coast would have like really big like and communities and like cultures. Do you know what I mean? Like Chicago was like Chicago's thing, and Atlanta now is like Atlanta's music. And I think it'd be nice to kind of garner a real culture for like smaller parts of the UK, and it's slowly coming through. But I think Birmingham, you just need to almost like build it and they'll come. I think like you build a great studio, a great space for young artists. I'd love to do that at some point in the future. And just like there's so much talent, and they've got that unique like view on the world. That's what people are looking for all the time, is like a different perspective on life. That you're going to get that from like smaller parts of the world, I think. Big time. I think even when you're chatting to the person at the supermarket, you can have a great funny conversation. You get that in music. You have to. There must be so many great songwriters around England who maybe they're not very good at socials, or they don't want to because they don't feel like it fits their personality, but they'll write awesome songs. And you just need to like try and show them another way, or like lift their voice up. 100. Hey Bradley, thanks so much for doing this. No mate, it's been a pleasure. Thank you. Cool. Just to end with, because I made a lot of mistakes at my part-time job, I'd always like fuck things up and
smash glasses or...
What were your part-time jobs?
Well, I've actually got a good list. I'm getting up to 35.
Strong.
I think the ones that stand out, I mean, during Christmas time, I had a van, so I offered to do a Christmas tree removal service.
Solid, yeah.
I did delivery for a Chinese place.
Sick.
And on my first shift, I blocked my car in. And so I had to use a friend's bicycle. And it was like a really small bicycle. And it was in a really hilly town.
Yeah, perfect.
And so when people ordered the soups, they're just out. And I just had to give it to these people and just say sorry that's out there.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I've done some funny ones.
Nice.
But I mean, just making mistakes.
Yeah.
I'm growing to like, I mean, I did it yesterday. I forgot to close the door behind me at one of the things I do. And I'm like, kick myself. It's kind of that after, it's like beer fear.
Yeah.
It's like sober beer fear.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. But I guess like it's how you learn, isn't it? It's how you learn. Then
what has happened in the last couple of years since writing solo music that it's been like a sliding doors moment, or it's been like okay, this is a fork in the road? Any particular days or like relationships, conversations?
I think like the decision when it really felt like, oh, I'm gonna do a solo project. That was like a really big moment, because I didn't set out with the intention of doing it really. Like I was always really happy in the band, and I still am, like we're still going, but I think I started to write a couple of songs not really knowing what they were for, and then it was just like, it was actually Cry at the Moon, and like at the end of that day I was like, this is exactly how I want to sound. This is exactly like, felt like a catalyst for more writing.
It's quite rock and roll.
Yeah, and it was just like fun. It was like I'd never done anything like that before, but I'd grown up on bands that played in a similar style.
Jeff Buckley, mentioned earlier.
Like,
it's got that kind of vibe, and it doesn't need to sound, you don't have to have the same vocal delivery as Jeff Buckley, or even play the same kind of chord progressions, but there's an energy.
Yeah,
there's like an aura in
it. And the organic. And
it is the space.
And that was not like something that I'd never explored before, like you're right, and tapping into artists that I've loved but never like really lent into. Do you know what I mean?
Who are they? What particular records?
So like Cry at the Moon was like songs for the I was listening to a lot of songs for the deaf, like the Stone Age album, and then like the recent single Daisies. Like I grew up like there was that like mid 2000s British indie was like, I loved that, like your Block Party and Pigeon Detectives, and then like there was loads.
19 Forever.
Stuff.
Indie disco.
Indie disco.
We were a bit too young for it, but there was those indie discos just before our time, I think.
Yeah. There was some great ones. Yeah, and my sister like used to listen to it, and there was like Ruben. I don't know if you ever listened to Ruben.
Love Ruben. Yeah, there's a sticker back there.
Is there?
There's a Ruben sticker.
Oh, I used to. Yeah.
Like, it's in the toilet actually.
Cribs.
And it's just got two bits. Cribs the same.
Yeah. And so there was like those like jangly guitars, and like I'd never written in that style, because I was writing with so many like huge pop writers throughout the whole process of the band, and I loved that, and I still do love that. But then also there's like, it's different to the style of writing of like, you're more indie band, so it's like there's a focus on a guitar part, and that becomes the big hook or the big moment. And like Franz Ferdinand did it amazing. Like that's not something that I've ever messed around with. So it's like that moment where I was like, right, I'm gonna do a solo album was a real like exciting prospect, because I was like, I can lean into stuff and take the pressure of feeling like I've got to write in a certain style off.
There are spaces, there are locations. You filmed the video for Daisies, I think, at Moth Club.
Yes, yeah.
And it's like, that's a place of indie rock.
Yeah,
and this is a place of indie rock. Signature Brew.
It feels like it, yeah.
So it's like, for fans, that's like an extra element to it. It's like you feel very immediately involved in it.
Yeah.
Because the stage is that tall and there's no barrier.
Yeah, and it's like bang on. I played Latitude for the first time over the weekend.
Yeah. Videos looks great of that.
Yeah, it was so fun, dude. And it was like the BBC introducing stage. We did a secret set and like popped up at like 11:30. And like it was very tame before, like everyone was like sat on sofas, and then by the end of it everyone was up, and it was great. And like that's what it's about. And like I almost think it's harder sometimes playing those like smaller stages, because there's such a like, you're face to face with it. You've got to really, you can't hide behind any big production, and like you've got to really engage. And I think it's like more testing as a performer sometimes than the bigger gigs.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, it was fun, mate. Yeah, it was good.
Nice one, Bradley. Thank you very
Pleasure.
much.
Thank you, dude. Lovely to chat.
So that was Bradley Simpson here on 101. Cheers for listening. You can catch Brad on tour in November throughout the UK, and those singles are streaming now. Cheers for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, make sure you click subscribe to 101 Part-Time Jobs. You might be listening to this on Spotify or Apple, and if you're able to leave a review, that would be hugely appreciated. Thank you. Cheers to Phoebe Sinclair for setting this up, and thank you to our sponsor DistroKid, because if you play in a band or you're an artist or you know someone who is, and you're not sure how to get your album out on Spotify, Apple, as well as Instagram, TikTok and YouTube and the rest of it, DistroKid is your friend. Head to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod to get 30% off your first year at DistroKid. It's an affordable annual fee that you're paying, and then after that you make all your own royalties from your streams. That's all going to you. Join 1 million other users making DistroKid their home to put out albums on Apple, Spotify and all the DSPs, as we call them in the industry. Head to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod for the best deal for musicians out there.
101 Part-Time Jobs is hosted by Giles Bidder and produced by me, Olivia Swash. This has been a Mighty Moon Media production.
101 part-time jobs, part-time jobs, part-time jobs, 101 part-time jobs, 101 part-time jobs, part-time jobs, part-time jobs, 101 part-time jobs, 100 part-time jobs, 101 part-time jobs, 101 part-time jobs, 101 part-time jobs.
This September 12th, SON Estrella Galicia are back in London with their micro festival at Hackney's Paper Dress Vintage. With live music, beer culture, street food and workshops, SON Estrella Galicia is the musical arm of the family-owned independent Estrella Galicia beer brand, which has been creating unforgettable music experiences since 2009. The September the 12th event will be headlined by Coach Party with support from the New Weaves, as well as yet-to-be-announced DJ sets and local music selectors. There will be a clothing repair workshop to customise your repaired clothes, a local food vendor serving 0 kilometre food with veggie and vegan options, a Soundcrafters interactive workshop, and a beer pouring workshop. Alongside the London event, there will be a series of new micro-festivals in Madrid, A Coruña, Barcelona later in 2024, and Berlin and Granada in 2025, reflecting a truly global approach from SON Estrella Galicia. So if you're in London, September the 12th, swing by Hackney's Paper Dress Vintage for SON Estrella Galicia. Tickets are available now via Dice. As an independent music podcast, 101 Part-Time Jobs highly recommends DistroKid as the best solution to putting out your own music online. You can join 1 million other artists from all across the world putting out their own music on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and everywhere else across the DSPs where people are listening to your music. My dream as a kid was to run a small little label, and now with DistroKid, getting music out online is the easiest it ever has been, making 100% of your own royalties while paying a small annual fee. And that fee's even smaller as a 101 Part-Time Jobs listener. Head to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod to get 30% off your first year putting out your own music on DistroKid. Getting your own music out into the world has never been easier. Head to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod to get the best deal you can.